Greetings and welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel. Today I am quite obviously in our wildflower meadow. So when we first purchased our place, this was former potato field, and where I'm seated is one corner of what was about 3 or 4 acres just of entirely mowed territory. It took us less than a second to decide that we were not going to mow 3 or 4 acres, obviously. And we want to do something more productive with this. We want to help out the pollinators, to promote pollinator communities. We want to promote beneficial insect communities. And we want to have useful products come from this area. To promote all of these goals, we want to increase the biodiversity of what's here, but not destroy the biodiversity that exists. So the area where I'm currently sitting has had no management other than not mowing. That's our only management change for about going on 3 growing seasons now. What you see coming up is things that were in the soil seed bank or had been growing and had survived the mowing. We have spotted knapweed, which isn't something we necessarily want, but is here. We have lots of Queen Anne's lace around. We have St. John's wort. We have wild strawberries. We have these beautiful black-eyed Susans. We even have this little solanaceous something, probably a physalis. And lots of wonderful things growing. Okay, these are great pollinator plants. These are beautiful. They beautify the site. It's lovely. And we want to enhance and promote and increase this biodiversity without destroying what's already here. So if you go and Google how to establish a wildflower meadow, you're very quickly going to bump into a whole lot of information on how to take a modern, conventional agricultural approach. Plow, fertilize, disc, cultipack, seed, cultipack again. And that will work, but it would destroy everything that's here. We don't want to do that. Both because we don't want to destroy the biodiversity of the green things and the flowering things that are already present, and because we don't want to destroy the microbial biodiversity, which we'll talk about in a second. This is the other end of this wildflower meadow, and you can see a couple other plants that are volunteering here. We've got our beautiful little wild daisies there in front, but what I really want to talk to you about are the plants that are coming in and helping rebuild the soil. This section was graded multiple times after it was a potato field because the former owners built a pond, it never filled, and then they erased it and filled it back in. So this area has been disturbed and dug and graded and regraded several times, so it's poorer soil than where we were before. And we have some plants that are helping us with this. Most importantly, here to my left, we have some bird's foot trefoil. This is not a native, but it is a marvelous nitrogen fixer that is helping restore soil fertility. And here we have some chicory, which is a wonderful deep tap-rooted plant that will help promote soil aeration and help with nutrient cycling, the kind of nutrient communication between the upper and lower levels of the soil. There's a lot written, miswritten, and argued about over these guys. We'll dissect them in their own video. But the presence of these taproots is important to helping restore a healthy soil stratigraphy. Okay? So again, these guys are associating with beneficial bacteria and microbes and fungi and helping to rebuild the living organism that is a healthy soil. So we don't want to just drop a plow and blow all of that up and destroy the hard work that these plant allies have been doing for us. So we want a gentler approach. The approach that we are taking is to take our seeds, plant them in pots, and then replant the seedlings and scatter them throughout here to gradually establish a healthy seed source and increase the biodiversity of this field in the gentlest fashion possible. So let's look at some successes. I brought you to this spot to show you a few things because we can look at 4 successful outplantings all at the same time. This is a salvia from Asia. This is Salvia hians, and this is one of the few that is zone 5 hardy. Okay? Most salvias really want warm weather, but they're really wonderful pollinator species. So I wanted to have some in here. So I'm planting in Asian species out with the rest of our things. Behind me, this is wild mint, okay? Mentha avensis. And this is a nice minty leaf for teas and for the table, so it's a useful plant for humans as well. Boneset. This is native to our area. It's relatively common, but there wasn't any here, so I wanted to pop it in. Again, it is a wonderful plant. These sort of small nectaries are really great for your parasitoid wasps and a lot of your beneficial insects that help the garden in other ways. Having these small flowers, it's important to have them in the mix. And back there is another mint. It's hairy wood mint. Okay, so we have 4 species outplanted in the gentle way that we're going to discuss, and they're doing well. So let's move to another spot and look at a couple other things. Here we are in a second spot in the same meadow where we've planted out quite a few things. And I just wanted to show off the gratuitous beauty of this blue vervain. This is about 1.5 years old. It's doing a lovely job of coloring up our meadow. Great pollinator plant. This is Verbena hostata. Just in front of it, a little bit younger, you can see the big leaves of Inula helenium, the elecampaign plant, which will go about, chest high and has some lovely little yellow sunflower looking flowers on it, also very useful in traditional medicine. Behind it, we have Artemisia ludoviciana. This is a prairie sage, okay? Again, lots of traditional uses, very important in Native Americans of the Upper Plains, and a beautiful, beautiful silvery blue color in the meadow, and still a wonderful pollinator plant. Useful, beautiful, lots of things going for it. Just behind it, you can just see kind of poking out of the grass. It's a little distant for this camera, but you can just see poking out some little white flowers of a mountain mint, pycnanthemum. And most of the mountain mints are really highly fragrant, great tea plants. Very, very strong minty flavor, like kind of a spearmint flavor. That one's a little on the dull scented side. I don't think I'll be making tea out of it, which is why it's out here instead of in the herb garden. But it's a great pollinator plant nonetheless, and it deserves its place in this meadow. So let's look at how we go about establishing these beauties in a way that is respectful of the ecology that is already here. Okay, so to plant these individual plants, I like to start the seeds in large pots like this. The reason is simply moisture control. I have experimented with doing this using plug trays and small pots, and I hated it. It was not a very good experience. The seedlings had struggled to grow to enough size to fully fill the pot volume. It was a really hot summer and it was hard to keep them moist enough all the time. And it ended up being really late in the season until I was able to really manipulate the seedlings, and then it was later than I really wanted to be planting. So I had a huge percentage of failures that first year. Since then I've been doing gang pots like this and have been having a lot more success with it. Okay? So I do recommend this. Just make yourself a pot of soil. Usually I fill it up about half full with, basically native garden soil or native soil mixed with a little bit of some sort of organic material. And then the top half with a good seed starting mix. And it's starting to rain, so we're going to do this quickly. But thank goodness it's raining. It has been so dry. This rain is allowing me to do this. And then when I go to plant these, I'm just going to put my hands in and kind of break off a little clump here. I'm not going to try and get them down to individual seedlings because I'll lose too much of the roots. But I'll have a clump of a few. And that's just fine. They can grow together and it will just produce a nice big flowering clump a little bit sooner. These these are purple coneflower. Okay. Get this little guy in here. You can see when they're individual, I only get a little bit of root. This is less likely to survive than these ones that have the big root ball. And now I prepared this spot by just flipping the sod. I do like to flip the sod in a nice little area here. It gets rid of some of the grass and gives them a fighting chance to really be successful and not just immediately shade it over. Okay. I'll just pull this away a bit. Put one clump in here. Push some soil back onto them. The other clump in here. Push some soil back into them. And these may not all survive, but I'm very likely to have good survival of at least a few in each of these little spots. Sometimes I'll put 2 or 3 in a spot. Sometimes I'll only put, one little clump in a spot. It really depends on how thickly they're growing. These seedlings, I had extraordinary germination success, as you can see, okay? Just going to put a little soil back in my pot. I'm not going to plant all of these today. I want to let a little more rainfall, but I wanted to do this for you folks. So I'm going to put a little bit more soil in here and let these go a little longer. Some, if I only have, 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 in a pot this size, then I'll let them grow a little bit bigger, and then I will plant them individually because I can get much more of their soil and don't have to disturb them as much, okay? And that just kind of goes with how the germination is. Now, you don't really know how well your year's planting went for 2 or 3 years. Let me show you why. If you look right over here, you see this little plant with the single leaf? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a compass plant. And if this leaf was not so distinctive, you would never be able to find him in all of the mess of this grass. This sort of planting, there is transplant shock and it does set the plants back. Right, so imagine by next year, these will be established, but the grass will have filled back in. Can you imagine trying to find a little leaf this size of a fairly generic shape in this sea of grass? You're not going to do it. So some things you can see and find because they're very, very distinctive, like this one is. Some things, like the blue vervain, just go to town their second year and they're easy to find. Mm-hmm. Some things are going to kind of sit and find their spot for 2 or 3 years before they start to produce a pronounced flower. Okay? So I had some Selene regia that I planted over on the other side that I don't know if it took or not. Because it's a small plant with a small leaf that in a 3rd or 4th year produces a big tall red flower. So it'll be next year or the year after till I have a reasonable chance of seeing that big flower and knowing whether or not my planting was successful. And that one I put in just for sheer diversity. It's a rare plant. We're a little bit out of its native range, but it's a rare plant in its native range, so I wanted to get some in here, and they were sourced responsibly from, licensed seed sellers, not wild collected. But I wanted to get some in here just for the sheer joy of helping the species out, And they are good pollinator plants too. So, this little guy, hard to spot, but let's go look at one of his relatives. This is a mature cut plant that's been in for 2.5 years. You can see its stature, and this is the sort of size that we'll get out of that little tiny leaf I showed you earlier. So it takes time. This is not instant gratification, but it is slow, even-keeled, and ultimately a successful way of increasing the biodiversity of your landscape. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you'll go give it a thumbs up, because this is a beautiful plant. It deserves a thumbs up. And that will also help the YouTube algorithm know that you've enjoyed this video, and it should show it to others. And I will see you next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.